Imagine taking a master class in civic awareness, media literacy, and like the rigorous application of the scientific method.
Yeah, which sounds incredibly heavy for most adults, honestly.
Right, but now imagine the entire curriculum was written explicitly for a 7-year-old.
It's wild.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking into a source that might just be the ultimate cure to adult commuter blindness. It's really for you, the listener, just as much as it is for kids.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is genuinely one of the most compelling frameworks for interacting with the world that we've come across, and mostly because it refuses to be complicated.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
goal of this deep dive isn't just to learn, what makes up a neighborhood. It is to fundamentally change how you look at your everyday surroundings, shifting from just passive existing to active observation.
So our source material today is this guidebook. It's titled 7 Ways to See Your Neighborhood, published by Magic Carpet Ride Publishing. And yes, it is technically a grade 2 textbook.
Technically, yeah.
But frankly, it's a manual that most adults desperately need right now. To set the stage for you, picture the cover of this book, all right?
It's a great cover.
It is. It's this vibrant, detailed illustration of 2 children kneeling on a sidewalk. And they are, like, closely examining a single yellow tulip and a monarch butterfly.
Mm-hmm. And the background is great, too, showing the neighborhood caught in transition, like spring blossoms on the left, autumn leaves fading on the right.
Exactly. And right there, nestled in the dirt next to the kids, is a slightly dented blue watering can.
Which is so important.
Yes. Keep that blue watering can in the back of your mind because it anchors a rather profound story later on. Okay, let's unpack this. The entire text is built around 7 core learning moves. Notice, compare, describe, predict, test, improve, and share.
Right.
To even begin that process, we really have to talk about how incredibly blind we are to our own lives.
We do, because to truly understand our surroundings, you first have to confront the neurological illusion of familiarity.
The illusion of familiarity.
Exactly. The premise here is that knowing a place is often the exact opposite of noticing it. As adults, our brains rely on something called the reticular activating system. It basically filters out unnecessary information.
Right, to save energy.
Exactly, to conserve cognitive energy. So if you walk into your own kitchen, your brain essentially just loads a saved image of that kitchen rather than processing the room fresh.
Like a video game loading a background.
Basically, yeah. And the book forces children to break that energy-saving habit.
And it does it with this beautifully simple exercise. It asks these kids to scan a room they know perfectly well, like their school hallway or, that kitchen you mentioned, and sort everything they see into 3 distinct categories.
I love this part.
First, things that have always been there. Second, things that are new. And third, and this is the one that really caught my attention, things that serve another person, like a handrail on the wall or a clock over a doorway.
The underlying mechanism there is just brilliant. That third category pulls the child entirely out of their own ego. It demands that they recognize the environment as a shared infrastructure. And to support this shift in perspective, the book introduces 4 promises for explorers.
Right, the promises.
Yeah, so the first is to stop before you observe. You simply cannot observe while in motion. Physical stillness is required.
Which is hard for a second grader.
Oh, incredibly hard. The second promise is to compare. So instead of relying on subjective adjectives like the leaf is large, you anchor it in reality by saying the leaf is longer than my finger.
Which introduces the concept of scale immediately.
Precisely. And then the third promise is to check before deciding. If you hear a rustling sound, don't just declare it's a bird and walk away.
You have to verify it.
Right. You listen again or you consult someone else. And the fourth is to leave things exactly as you found them.
Which means observation should never become extraction.
Exactly. And the counterintuitive part of this is that the book teaches children that a discovery doesn't have to be rare. It just has to be carefully noticed.
Right.
Returning to the exact same spot reveals quiet patterns, like a muddy shoe rack by the back door looks entirely different and tells a completely different story on a rainy Tuesday versus a dry Thursday.
I love that.
Yeah.
It immediately makes me think of commuter blindness.
Yeah.
Like, for you listening, think about your own morning commute today. You know that feeling when you're driving to work or taking the train and you suddenly snap to attention and realize you have absolutely zero memory of the last 5 miles?
Oh, yeah. Terrifying, but we all do it.
Right. Your brain just deleted it all because it's familiar territory.
Yeah.
But I do want to push back a little on how this applies to a 7-year-old.
Okay, go for it.
For a kid with boundless bouncing off the walls energy isn't telling them to like just look at a shoe rack or a kitchen counter a bit passive.
You would think so. And frankly, keeping a 7-year-old physically still is a monumental task. But what's fascinating here is that neurologically, active noticing spikes brain activity significantly more than physical running around.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It is an exercise in cognitive restraint. It requires a conscious fight against the brain's natural desire to gloss over the mundane.
Oh, wow.
The book explicitly teaches these kids that an honest gap in their observation is vastly superior to an invented result.
I see.
So if they missed a day of tracking a tree's growth, they shouldn't just guess what happened to fill in the blank. They are actively learning the discipline of truth over perfection.
And once you break that habit of ignoring the familiar, the concepts evolve. Like, it's one thing to recognize the physical objects in our environment, but the real insight comes when we start noticing who the familiar world is actually built for.
Absolutely.
We move from observing static objects to decoding the invisible human systems that keep a community alive.
Right. We enter the realm of the built environment and supportive design. This is really where observation meets empathy.
It's incredibly humbling to realize how often we walk past these things. The book explains to these second graders that a wide doorway, or like a ramp at the post office, isn't just there for a wheelchair user.
Yeah.
That exact same ramp helps parents pushing heavy strollers. It helps delivery workers navigating large carts. It helps travelers pulling rolling luggage.
Yeah.
It trains kids to look at the infrastructure of their town and ask, who is doing something here? What are they trying to accomplish? And who might this design help?
And the text builds this awareness into a concept it calls the web of work.
Oh, I loved this part.
It's so good. And it illustrates this using a perfectly mundane object, a simple loaf of bread.
Just a normal loaf of bread.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It challenges the children to trace that bread backward from their kitchen table. So it connects the growers in the field, the millers grinding the wheat, the bakers,
The transport drivers running the
the
logistics.
store clerks, all the way through to the municipal waste collection workers who actually take away the empty plastic packaging.
Right.
The lesson is foundational. A community does not run on isolated heroes. It survives on interconnected systems.
It's like watching a complex theater production. When we go to a play, our instinct is to only look at the actors in the spotlight. But this curriculum is training 7-year-olds to look at the stagehands,
Is that great analogy?
to actively look for the people, pulling the ropes, adjusting the lights, and, making the performance possible.
And this raises an important question about how that environmental awareness ties directly into human safety.
Right. Safety.
Because safety in this book isn't presented as a terrifying list of restrictions tacked onto the end of a chapter. It is integrated as an active, empowering part of learning.
It's not just don't do this, don't do that.
Exactly. Instead of offering a vague, anxiety-inducing warning like just be careful, the book translates safety into active, concrete commands. Stop at the edge. Look in every direction.
The phrase they use is use no, move, tell. That one really stuck with me.
It is a phenomenal framework because it shifts the burden of safety. The book instructs kids to judge a situation not just by whether a face is familiar to them, but by analyzing behavior.
Right, because familiar faces can still cross boundaries.
Exactly. If an adult's behavior feels wrong or crosses a boundary, the children are taught to say no, move immediately to a populated area, and tell a trusted adult.
Yeah.
It goes beyond avoiding danger. It actively empowers children to advocate for their own bodily autonomy.
It also teaches them how to interact with the adults who are actually running these community systems. Like, there is a deeply practical section on how to interview community workers respectfully.
Yes, the interview guide.
It guides the kids to ask how someone does their job. So questions like, what do you check first to keep people safe here? Rather than asking intrusive personal questions about income or age or where they live.
Right.
And it goes out of its way to warn against treating one single worker as a stereotype for an entire profession.
It is cultivating civic respect. You are teaching a child to acknowledge a worker's professional expertise without demanding access to their entire life story.
Which a lot of adults could probably learn to do.
Oh, without a doubt.
But, it's one thing to recognize how human systems like bakeries and sidewalks adapt to us. The real test of observation is watching how non-human systems adapt. Which brings us to how the book drops us right into the natural environment.
Right.
Just as human communities are interconnected webs of action, natural environments are framed as interconnected timelines. Here's where it gets really interesting for me.
The transition in the text is just seamless. It introduces the idea that seasons are not just static collections of items.
Right, like spring isn't just a bucket of flowers.
Exactly. And autumn is not just a pile of orange leaves. Seasons are patterns, and crucially, they arrive unevenly.
The example they give is so specific and illuminating. They point out that grass might sprout first right next to a warm brick wall that absorbs the sun.
While a shady patch just 3 feet away is still frozen solid.
Yes, the boundary between summer and autumn isn't a single date you circle on a calendar. It is a slow, overlapping, highly localized shift.
And by understanding that unevenness, children are taught to observe what seems to be absent. And this is a massive critical thinking skill.
Absolutely.
In the dead of winter, a casual observer might look at a garden and write, no flowers, no insects, nothing is happening. But the book prompts the child to ask where life might be hiding or waiting.
Right.
A bare branch is not inherently dead. If a child visits a tree 3 times in the bitter cold and observes a tiny bud that hasn't changed size at all, the book frames that as a massive success.
Wow.
That bud hasn't failed to grow. It has successfully survived 3 cold visits.
See, the book marries this deep, almost poetic empathy for nature with a rigorous introduction to the scientific method. Like, there's an entire segment on the ethics of observation.
Mm-hmm.
It tells kids that if they see an interesting insect, their very first move should be looking at its habitat, the damp leaves, the specific cracks in the pavement before they focus on the bug itself.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, by teaching a child to look at the habitat first, the book fundamentally shifts their worldview from one of extraction to one of stewardship.
Exactly.
You are no longer conquering nature to put it in a glass jar on your nightstand. You are recognizing that you are a guest in its home.
I love that.
The text even draws a hard ethical line, explicitly stating you should never deprive living plant of water just to create a dramatic result for a science experiment.
Right. You observe and compare natural differences.
Yeah.
You don't engineer suffering for data.
Precisely.
And they carry that exact same logic, the rigorous scientific method,
Yeah.
into a lesson on design and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
They have the kids build a moving toy car, and they introduce a concept called the fair test.
The fair test, yes.
So if your toy car isn't rolling straight, you don't change the wheels, the weight of the car, and the angle of the ramp all at the exact same time. You change one single feature at a time, like just the spacing of the wheels.
Right.
That way, you actually know what specific variable caused the improvement.
It is the absolute foundation of variable isolation in research. It's the exact same logic behind adult A/B testing in digital marketing, or isolating variables in complex project management.
But it's being taught using rubber bands, cardboard, and toy wheels.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a fascinating pivot. You have all these second graders gathering this amazing isolated data. They're noticing the built environment. They're tracking microseasons. They are running fair tests.
Yeah.
But gathering all that data is completely useless if you lack the ability to communicate it accurately.
This is where the book introduces what might be its most vital lesson, which is fundamentally a lesson in media literacy.
Media literacy for 7-year-olds.
Yes. It requires the children to rigorously separate their findings into 3 distinct buckets: evidence, interpretation, and report.
It is genuinely humbling to realize that the difference between these 3 concepts, something adults literally war over on social media on a daily basis,
Oh, completely.
is being effectively taught to 7-year-olds using dirt and leaves.
It really puts adult discourse in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
The book breaks it down flawlessly. So there were 5 leaves. On the stem is evidence. It is a verifiable, observable fact.
Right.
The plant looked healthy is an interpretation. It is a subjective judgment based on the evidence.
Got it.
And the gardener said the soil dries quickly here is a report. It is information coming from a secondary source, not direct observation.
And all of these disparate threads, like the observation, the civic respect, the variable testing, the media literacy, they all culminate in this beautiful closing story.
Yes.
Remember the cover art I asked you to picture at the very beginning?
The tulip and the watering can.
The kids, the tulip, and the slightly dented blue watering can.
The story of Maya and the blue watering can. It serves as the narrative glue for every lesson in the curriculum.
So in the story, Maya and her class are on a neighborhood walk, and she spots this dented blue watering can sitting next to an empty-looking flower bed by the public library. And instead of just glossing over it, she applies her observation skills. She asks who uses that, who takes care of this place.
She is actively noticing the web of work.
Exactly. So they meet Mr. Rivera. He's a librarian who volunteers in the garden. Maya interviews him respectfully, asking about his process rather than prying into his personal life.
Using those interview skills.
Right. She asks what the most important part of his work is, and he tells her it's looking at more than just the flowers. It's keeping the path clear for people, watching out for stinging insects, staying safe in the heat.
It's all connected.
Maya asks if the class can help, and they set up a plan to observe the garden twice a month.
And what happens next is crucial. So on their very first visit, another student named Eli spots a butterfly before anyone else. Maya is visibly disappointed she missed it.
Right, because kids always want to be first.
Exactly, but her teacher steps in and tells her a shared discovery is still a discovery.
I love how that reframes the entire learning process. It completely removes the toxic competition of, I saw it first, therefore I win. It fosters true collaborative learning, showing them that they are building a collective pool of knowledge, not competing for a prize.
And as the story progresses and the seasons change, the flowers die back. Winter arrives, and the bed looks entirely empty.
Completely barren.
Right. But Maya uses the critical skill of looking for what seems absent. She gets close, making sure to stay behind the physical boundary line to practice safety, and she spots a tiny green bud. Just 2 leaves, smaller than a fingernail.
Through the freezing winter, the class visits 3 more times.
Yeah.
The bud doesn't grow at all. Eli gets frustrated, asking why they keep looking if nothing is changing.
Which is such a natural reaction.
And Maya explains, because it stayed there through the cold. She recognized its survival as an active process.
That's the key right there.
And finally, in spring, the bud swells and blooms into a brilliant yellow tulip, the exact tulip from the cover of the book. Maya realizes she didn't just passively watch a garden grow, she grew alongside it. Her ability to describe her environment evolved from basic phrases like drooping leaves to factoring in the weather, the soil conditions, the shade, and the human impact of Mr. Rivera's watering can.
The authors use Maya's story to align perfectly with what psychologists like Carol Dweck call a growth mindset.
Right, growth mindset.
The book teaches that growth is far more than just increasing in physical height. Growth is a measurable change in attention. It is the ability to transform the absolute wall of I cannot do this into the open door of not yet or not that way.
And as the kids prepare to share all their findings in a classroom display, we get one final, incredibly relevant lesson.
This is so important for today.
The teacher goes through all their photos to ensure there are no faces, no private conversations overheard, no license plates, and no identifying details in the background of their shots.
It is quite literally a masterclass in digital citizenship and data privacy,
Yeah.
seamlessly disguised as a neighborhood nature walk. It instills the principle that having permission to take a picture is not the same thing as having permission to publish it. That is a boundary that a significant portion of the adult population still struggles to respect online.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from simply scanning a familiar kitchen to understanding the complex, interconnected ecosystem of an entire neighborhood.
Right.
We've learned that a neighborhood isn't a static display built for our casual inspection. It is a living, breathing timeline that requires active engagement.
It ultimately means that the world around us is only as rich and only as meaningful as the attention we are willing to give it.
I really hope that tomorrow, when you're doing your normal routine, driving to work, walking the dog, grabbing a coffee, you look at it a little differently. Look for the stagehands pulling the ropes.
Yeah.
Look for the unseen web of work, the quiet, stubborn survival of nature in the cracks of the sidewalk, and the supportive design hiding in plain sight.
And before we wrap up, there is one final, incredibly provocative thought tucked away in the book's family reading reference section at the very end.
Wow.
It explores how language fundamentally shapes our attention. The authors point out that if a child points to a bird in a tree and an adult immediately names the species, saying, "Oh, that's a robin," it almost always shuts down the inquiry.
Wow.
The mystery is considered solved, and the child's brain stops looking.
The label basically acts as a period at the end of the sentence. It ends the conversation.
It does. But if the adult resists that urge and instead asks, what part of it caught your attention first, or what did its legs do when it landed, they leave space for the child's own attention to expand.
Right.
Naming a thing can always wait. Describing a thing is where the actual learning happens.
That is such a profound challenge for all of us, not just for kids looking at birds.
Yeah.
How often do we shut down our own curiosity by quickly slapping a label on something?
Oh, all the time.
Like a coworker, a neighborhood, a complex problem. Instead of pausing to ask ourselves what actually caught our eye in the first place, how often do we settle for the easy label instead of looking deeper for the dented blue watering can hiding in the soil?
It's certainly a question worth asking ourselves the next time we confidently think we already know exactly what we're looking at.
Keep noticing. Keep comparing. We'll see you on the next deep dive.